Hey guys, my name's Frank and this is my workshop. Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. We're working on the Cub Cadet Dozer. Task today is to open up this transaxle differential, make the modifications to it necessary for the project. I've got the rear end, our replacement rear end here in a cradle, and upside, well, it's rear end up. The way it's set, this is the drawbar, so you would normally, from the back of the tractor, this is, what it would look like. This is the rear cover. We're going to take it off. That'll let us access the spider and ring gear and allow us to remove the clip and pull one of these axles. So that's what we're going to do now. All right, so this gives you a view of the spider, the ring gear, and so we're going to remove the one axle. There are C-clips on the end of the axle holding it within the spider here. And so we'll pull one of these. I have to look at my diagram to see which one to pull. And then we'll turn the splines off the axle, put it back in, make sure it free spins. And then we're going to weld the spider so that it drives the other axle permanently. Okay. One of the things you want to be careful about when you drive the clip off, let me see if I can get let's get the camera closer here. All right, the C-clip is right here. Goes around, this is the end of the drive shaft, and the C-clip is right here. I can see one side of it, and that's the other side of it. I rotate the axle around, you can see the clip. So we need to knock this clip off. The risk is the clip is going to fall down inside the housing, so we want to make sure if it does that we can retrieve it. So I may put my hand behind it when I knock it out, try to catch it. This is my diagram or drawing of the frame and the two transaxles and the engine. So this is the front of the frame. This transaxle is in its normal position, counterclockwise rotation. Here's the engine. I've set it off to the side, but it would be above it, and it's counterclockwise, so it'll drive a common drive shaft. And back here, this transmission is turned around, so the hydrostat is sticking out the back. Now, I will have to enclose that with an extension of the frame, but that's no problem. And my plan is that this side, the left side, so this is facing forward this way, the left side here will be the drive axle for the tracks on the left side of the dozer, and the right side will be the drive for the tracks on the right side of the dozer. I mean, since the tracks are continuous, and in a normal dozer you can track forward or backward, your drives are normally on the front or the rear, I don't know which. Anyway, they're normally on one end, both on one end, and the dozer works backwards or forwards equally well generally. So I don't think it matters that the drives are on diagonal opposite corners, because the tracks are continuous and it should work fine. At least it'll work well enough for this. So this axle needs to be free spinning, and this axle up here needs to be free spinning. So this is the looking at the rear. We're looking at the rear of the transmission is here. So we're feeding the back side of the hydro, which is clockwise rotation. So we want the left axle looking at the back end of the rear end to be removed and the splines turned off of it. So here we are looking at the back end. This is the bottom, so that's the left side over there. Normally you would look at the tractor. So this is how the tractor would appear, looking at the back of the rear end, and so this will be inside the frame. That'll be this end of it. So we want this side to drive over here, and this side, the left side, holding it like this, the left side over here will free spin. Now, all right, you can remove the seat clip with a couple of screwdrivers, or in this case a punch and a screwdriver. Just put them on both sides of the clip. All right, I've already pushed it off. I'm going to see if I can grab it without it falling down. All right. Got it. All right, so then the axle just pulls right out. You see the splines here on the end of the axle. Okay, so we're going to turn this section of the shaft down to 7/8 of an inch. I've got a bronze bushing that's going to fit in the spider. When we remove these splines, and I'm going to grind them off. This is hardened. The interrupted cut on these hardened splines, if I were to try to turn them off, would be pretty difficult. But what I'm going to do is turn from where the splines begin to this shoulder to 7/8 of an inch. Now right now it's 0.885, 885 thousandths. It only needs to come down 10 thousandths to 0.875, which would be 7/8. So I have bushings which are 7/8 inside the ID and 1 inch OD, and we will mill out the spider to hold the 1 inch outside diameter of the bronze bushing. So the shaft is supported two places, one by the splines on the spider bevel gear, and at the other end by a roller bearing in the axle housing. So if I just turn the splines off here, then there's nothing to support this end other than the bore of the spider. And the bore of the spider is a little bit larger than this. It's not quite an inch. It's 0.95. I measured a few minutes ago. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's large enough that this is a fairly loose fit. So this end of the shaft would be rattling around inside the differential. So I think it's best to go ahead and fit a bronze bushing. We only need to do it on this one shaft on the one side that we're making free spinning within the rear end. So I'm going to turn this down to just under 7/8 of an inch. It's 0.89 there. .895. So it's got to come down to 0.875. So looks like almost 20 thousandths to come off. And then we'll grind the splines off. We're going to keep the groove at the end to hold the C-clip. And that way we'll have good support at this end of the shaft. .872. So that's .874. So that's a good size to fit inside the 5/8 inch bearing. I mean the 7/8 inch bearing. So we're good there. I'm going to go ahead and take this out of the chuck and mount it in the vise. So this surface on the end doesn't have to be smooth or even, because it's not going to ride on anything. It's just going to go through the splined gear in the spider, and we don't want the splines to engage. It'll be riding on a bearing which will fit right here. All right. I'll get the spider and we can look at it. Okay, so here's the spider assembly. This is the location where we're going to put the 1-inch bearing in, so this needs to be bored out. But the key is for it to go in there and spin freely. All right. So, and I'm holding the spider gear, and it's all right. It's a little rough still. I'm going to take a little bit more off. All right, I've got the drive shaft chucked back in the lathe, and since I've already ground most of the splines off, so I think I'm at the point where I can use the lathe just to smooth that up, make sure there's no high spots that might interfere with the splines. All right, let's go try that in the spider. All right, so that's free spinning and gives us enough clearance here for the bushing to go in. Need to bore this out to 1 inch. Got the spider clamped here in the mill, and just centering it. That's centered. This is a tenths indicator, so that's centered within a mill, which should be plenty close enough for what we're doing. I've got my DRO zeroed out. Got the boring head set up here. So we're going to go from 0.90 to 1.0. So that's 1/10 of an inch total, or 50 thousandths, off of each side. Let's just check the motion of the boring head right now. All right, that looks even all the way around. Got my 0 set with the DRO. Point 903. All right, so let's take it halfway there. We'll take 25 thousandths. Point 927. All right, so I need 20 thousandths more. All right, 1,000th over. So that'll be a nice easy fit for the bearing to go in there. All right, I'm going to leave it set up in the mill till I get the bearing. I had to order the an oil light bushing bearing for here from McMaster Car, so that should be here in a day. We'll get back to that when that arrives. You might, anytime you have the axles pulled out, you might as well replace the oil seals. They only cost, you know, a couple of bucks. Here's the seals. This is a SKF 9878. Alright, so it's just a standard, stock standard oil seal. We'll pull the old one out and tap this one in. Got one of the axle housings here clamped in the vise. We're going to replace the oil seals. Alright, so out comes the old seal. As you can see, I've got both differentials completely disassembled. This is the first one we started working on, and so you can see the bearings and the bearing carrier for the spider, and the other transaxle. What I've decided to do is I had two spare transaxles, hydrostatic drive transaxles, and I've decided that I'm going to use these two and do the work on these two. This is the one that had the hydrostat we modified. I took the hydrostat off of this one. It is not a ported hydrostat. My plan is to remove the hydrostat from this transaxle, this rear end, and put this hydrostat on that other one. And the only reason I decided to do that is because this particular transaxle has axles with disc brakes. So what I've decided to do was save this. I don't need the disc brakes, and I really can't use these axles because of the brake pad on here, the brake disc rotor rather, that's, you know, permanently fastened to the end of the axle. I'd have to cut it off or something. So what I decided to do was just save this rear end for another use. Many of my other tractors have disc brakes, and so I decided to save this particular rear end for a different project. I need this hydrostat because it's got the ports on it, so I'll put this hydrostat on one of those two rear ends. the other hydrostat we worked on will go in here. So that was my reasoning for deciding to tear these apart. And you know, there's a little bit of convenience here having the two transaxles, be able to work on them without having to tear that one out of the frame. I can take the hydrostat off that, work on it, mount it on this rear end, and then we can install it on this end of the frame. So you notice I have it just jacked up and the tires are off of it. Okay, so that's my rationale for all this stuff torn apart. I've got, as of right now, I've got both axles turned. I've got one spider assembly bored out. I'm waiting for my bronze bearings from McMaster to, you know, just check the fit on the axles and the in the bearing, the spider bearing carrier. I should get that. I should get the bearings from McMaster either later today or tomorrow. I mean, I just saw the UPS truck come a few minutes ago, so they may be here. All right, check back with you shortly. I said I was waiting for the bronze bushings. They came while I was working here this morning, so they're, you know, a good fit on the shafts, and good fit in the spider ring gear assembly. So that's good news. All right, so I can. I was waiting to bore the other spider bore till I got the bushings just to confirm their fit, but they fit fine. So that's the next thing. I'm going to do that off camera and bring you back when we start to assemble the differentials and transaxles, put them back together. All right. Getting ready to weld the spiders on these two differentials. I've got them sitting here in the vise. They're just being held loosely. I've cut out a small piece of 3/16 flat bar stock to fit in there on both sides. So that will give me something to weld to. I mean, you could do it without doing that, but I want to protect the ends of the axles, so I think this is going to be the best way to do it. I can weld this in place, weld it to the teeth, weld all the way around. I'm only going to weld one side. I need access to the other side if we ever have to remove the axles. Spot weld these in place first, both of them, and then come back and run a heavy bead all the way around to weld up these two spiders. So I've got the ground clamp on this one. As soon as I turn my welder on, this noise, you can hear it. As soon as I do that, turn that on, the dogs bail. The dogs leave. As well they should. You don't want them watching the arc. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to put some duct tape on these ring gears to avoid any weld splatter. It would mess up the gear teeth. All right, got them both welded up. I mean, it's nothing very pretty about the welds, but they certainly are sufficient to hold the spider from rotating. All right, we'll just let them sit there and cool. All right, I don't know if you've noticed this white stuff on here. It's different, looks different than the other spider. I think this is just, before I welded them, I degreased them. I put them in the parts washer, washed them good. This one dried this way. I think it's just deposits from the, yeah, I mean, look at that, it comes right off. I think that's just deposits from being in the transmission for so long. Some deposit from the hydraulic oil that was on it, or maybe the previous owner used a different kind of oil. Normally one of the manufacturer specs high trans. I use a generic tractor hydraulic fluid that meets the high trans spec. Some people swear by the high trans. It's a lot more expensive. I don't know there's that much difference. Anyway, okay, bearings back on this, goes back in the second rear end. All right, I'm going to wrap up this video at this point. We've got the two Dozer Drives, as I'm calling them. Used to be Cub Cadet rear ends. They're now modified and they're Dozer Drives. So the last thing I need to do to finish these is put the C-clips. Got a bag of replacement C-clips on the ends of the axles, and then attach the rear covers. I've got gaskets for the rear covers, and of course the rear covers are right here, and we'll put them on. And so I'll bring you back next episode. We'll get the hydros, the hydro that we modified, reinstalled. We'll pull the hydro off the front of the this transaxle. We'll pull this hydro off. I'll make modifications to that off camera probably, and then we'll get both hydros installed on these two Dozer Drives, and we'll put them in the frame. So that's what's coming up next on the Cub Cadet Dozer build. Thanks guys for watching. Would appreciate a thumbs up, and if you've got friends who are interested in this kind of stuff, share the video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.